What is up, guys? Clay K here with another episode of Baseball Real Talk. Today we're going to talk about the top tier free agents and where I think they're going to land. Let's do it. Alright, the first free agent we're going to talk about today is Trevor Bauer. Trevor Bauer is one of those guys who speaks his mind and tells you exactly what he's looking for. You know what? He's looking to go to a competitive team. At first he was saying he wanted a 1-year contract. Now he's saying he wants a multi-year contract. So it's tough to gauge the guy. But I do know that there's certain teams that need him, and one of those teams are most likely going to be the teams to get him. So let's go over what teams I think Trevor Bauer can land at. Now, the first team that I think have a real shot at signing Trevor Bauer are the Toronto Blue Jays. The Toronto Blue Jays said that they are not afraid to spend money this year. They have been in contact with Trevor Bauer. I think if they lose out on some of these other big free agent signings, they're going to go to Trevor Bauer, and Trevor Bauer is going to be the guy to be pitching for the Toronto Blue Jays. The second team that I think has a real shot at signing Trevor Bauer are the Anaheim Angels. The Angels desperately need pitching. And who would be better to lead them on the mound than Trevor Bauer? Trevor Bauer has ace-type stuff, and the Angels so desperately need that in their rotation. He is a little expensive, and the Angels have maxed out their budget with Anthony Rendon, Albert Pujols, Mike Trout. So if they do end up signing him, I think it's going to be their last signing of the season, and it's going to leave them a little vulnerable in their bullpen. And let's face it, one starter isn't going to get them to the playoffs. I think they have a much bigger problem than that. But one place that really does make sense for Trevor Bauer would be the Anaheim Angels. The third team I think that could sign Trevor Bauer would be, of course, the LA Dodgers. The Dodgers have plenty of money. They're coming off a World Series championship. I think if they just wanted to solidify that bullpen, they go out, they get Trevor Bauer. Now look it, they've got Walker Buehler, Trevor Bauer, Clayton Kershaw. I mean, those three right there could just take you through the playoffs. And then I really think Julio Urias is going to be a stud for them this year. I mean, with those four guys right there, that is just a monster rotation. I think it just kind of locks in, especially with the big moves that the Padres and the Mets have been making this year. It wouldn't be bad for the Dodgers to just go out and get that guy that could really, really help them. And I think Trevor Bauer could be that guy. The Dodgers already have such a great rotation that I don't think it's a need, but I think with the Dodgers money and after just coming off a World Series championship, I could definitely see him going to LA. Now, my fourth and final team for Trevor Bauer would be the Mets. Now, the Mets have already spent some money this offseason, and it kind of sounds like they're going after George Springer, but I think with Steve Cohen's big budget, I think Trevor Bauer is totally an option for the Mets, especially if they do lose out on maybe the George Springer or Michael Brantley sweepstakes. I could definitely see the Mets going out and signing Trevor Bauer. He would make a great addition to the rotation. I mean, Jacob deGrom, Trevor Bauer, Marcus Stroman, Noah Syndergaard when he comes back. That would just be a stud rotation. And I think the Mets have the money to do it, so I'm not going to count them out. All right, the next guy we're going to move on to is George Springer. George Springer is an absolute stud. I pick him up on my fantasy baseball league almost every year. I mean, he's just one of those guys you can count on to really produce. He even had a slow season to start with in 2020, but then towards the end of that season, especially in playoffs, I mean, the guy was killing it. And he's the guy that you can just jump on his back and he's going to do great things. He has said what he's looking for in a team and how much money he would like to receive. I think there's really only two teams that are involved on the George Springer sweepstakes, and that would be the Mets and the Blue Jays. I think the Mets are the team to sign George Springer. Like I said, he is the guy that you can just jump on his back and ride. They already have such a great team. They could use a better outfielder, and he would just be that center fielder that they desperately need. And I think the guy would fit great in Queens. But the Blue Jays have been talking to him a lot. They seem really interested. I think they're actually might be talking to him more than the Mets. I think I can't count out the Blue Jays. I could definitely see them, especially after losing out on some other players that they were really interested in. I could see them just going out and signing George Springer for the amount of money that he wants. And let's face it, he's going to make whatever team he signs to better. All right, the third guy we're talking about is JT Realmuto, the obvious best catcher in the game right now. He is not getting as much traction as maybe he deserves. I think a team should be jumping all over this guy, but yet catchers don't get the love that they deserve, especially as it's a position that isn't primarily looked as an offensive contender. I don't think he's getting the love that he deserves, but this guy is an absolute stud. I mean, he can run, he can hit, he can catch, he's a defensive guy. I mean, he's a five-tool guy as a catcher, and teams should be looking at that as a total win. I think the best team for him is going to be re-signing with the Phillies. I think the Phillies saw what he can do. The Phillies without JT Realmuto is going to be a really big issue. So I think it would just be smart for the Phillies to go sign him to a 4-year contract, 5-year contract, whatever he's looking for. And I think you guys can really work off of him in the future. The other team that I have pegged for JT Realmuto is the San Diego Padres. I think they've been making some big moves this year. I think they don't necessarily have a catcher at the moment. And, you know, you're going to need somebody to catch all those pitchers that they got. With Snell, Darvish, Lamet, Paddock, I mean, they have a really good rotation, and they're kind of missing out on a catcher. Now, they could go sign Jason Castro again, or they could sign another guy like that. But I think if they went out and they got JT Realmuto, not only is he going to just make their offensive lineup that much better, he's going to be a guy that they can build around for years. All right, on to the next one. And the next one we got, Marcel Ozuna. Ozuna was a stud for the Braves last year. I think a lot of teams have been discounting him this year so far because they're waiting for the DH rule and to see if it's going to be an all-league thing or if it's just going to go back to normal, where it's just the American League with the DH rule. I think the DH rule should be for everybody. We want to see hitters hit. Pitchers aren't signed to hit baseballs. It's cool. I was a pitcher in college. I think it's cool when pitchers hit. I want to see balls go out of the park, and the best way to do that is to have the DH rule for everybody. That being said, I think these teams are going to need a Marcel Ozuna on their team. I think the Braves are the #1 team that should re-sign him. Look what he did with the Braves. I mean, he loved it there. I think the clubhouse was stoked to have him. I mean, it makes sense for the Braves to re-sign this guy. I think losing him, you're going to lose a big bat in that lineup, and you're not going to quite have someone to replace it. Now, I know you got Freddie Freeman, you got Acuna Jr. I'm not saying you're going to have a bad offensive lineup or anything, but with Marcel Ozuna, he just solidifies that lineup, and he's going to make it a lot better for all those other guys involved. The next team that I think could pick him up are the Dodgers. I think if the Dodgers picked up Ozuna and the DH rule was around, I think he would just be a great addition. He's going to solidify that lineup. He's going to be a great middle of the lineup bat, and I think the Dodgers have the money to spend, especially if they don't go after a Trevor Bauer or, you know, they're looking for a cheaper option. I think they could get Ozuna and he would do great things in LA. My third team for him would be the San Francisco Giants. Now, I know the Giants don't seem like a contender since they're kind of a rebuild team, but they have some great guys. They're really coming up. I think a guy like Marcel Ozuna could really help them and would give them a bat in the middle of the lineup that could do some damage. The Giants are actually a team to look out for. I think they're going to do better than a lot of people think. My fourth and final team would be the Chicago White Sox. I think the White Sox have a chance at making the playoffs this year, like they did last year, but I think they can actually go further into the playoffs. Now, they need another bat. Marcel Ozuna is going to give them that middle of the lineup bat that can really do some damage behind Jose Abreu, Eloy Jimenez, and I think it's just a great move. I think he would fit in great with the Chicago White Sox. I think the White Sox have solidified their rotation. Lucas Giolito, Dallas Keuchel, Lance Lynn. That's a winning three right there. I think they could really perform in the playoffs if they can make it there, and I think they should. I think Marcel Ozuna would be a great fit for the Chicago White Sox. On to the next one. The next guy I have is Michael Brantley. Michael Brantley is one of those under-the-radar top-tier players. I mean, this guy is a professional hitter. Maybe his defense has gone down in years, but you know what? The guy can hit, and that's what teams pay for. I think this guy has plenty of years left where he's going to put the ball in play. He's going to hit 20 to 25 plus home runs, and I think he's going to be a stud in the middle of the lineup for one of these teams. The first team I have for Michael Brantley would be the New York Mets. I think the Mets, if they don't get George Springer, they're still going to be looking for an outfielder. I know they're looking for a center fielder, and Michael Brantley is not a center fielder. I think if George Springer isn't signed to the Mets should look at Michael Brantley. Michael Brantley is one of those guys who's just going to hit for you. He's going to hit 300 plus. He's going to hit 25 jacks. I mean, what team wouldn't want that? You move Michael Conforto over to center field, you put Michael Brantley in right, and you just let him do his thing. Imagine that lineup. Francisco Lindor, Michael Brantley, Pete Alonso, James McCann. I mean, they actually have a stud lineup, and they have a great rotation to go with it. I think if the Mets can pick up a George Springer or a Michael Brantley, it's just going to make their team that much better, and they really have a chance of winning the World Series this year. Next on my list for Michael Brantley is the Yankees. Now, the Yankees are one of those teams that have the money to do it. I know their main focal point is DJ LeMahieu right now. That's all great and wonderful because DJ LeMahieu could be the best hitter in baseball, but they're going to need to pick up another bat, especially if they want to contend in the playoffs this year. And I think Michael Brantley is that guy who could just do that. I see him in pinstripes. I think the Yankees fans would love him. He could DH. He could play the outfield. I mean, he's just one of those guys who would be a stud. And let's face it, the Yankees always seem to have injuries. So Michael Brantley being there in case Giancarlo Stanton goes down and Aaron Judge goes down, he's going to be that great backup guy that will play every day and he'll be able to fill in holes when you need him. I think Michael Brantley would be a great fit for the Yankees, and I think the Yankees would be smart to go pick him up. The third team I have for Michael Brantley would be the Minnesota Twins. They just got rid of Eddie Rosario, and they could use another bat in their lineup. They still haven't signed Nelson Cruz. He'd be that middle-of-the-order bat that you know is going to get hits. He's going to hit 25-plus home runs. I think he would just be a winning pick for the Twins. My fourth and final team for Michael Brantley would be the Toronto Blue Jays. The Blue Jays are one of those teams that are not afraid to spend money this year. They said that they are going to make some big moves, so I just don't want to put them out on any team. I think if they don't end up signing George Springer, that Michael Brantley would be a great addition. They're looking for an older guy who can still hit, who can show their young guys how to play and what to do. I think Michael Brantley would be a huge pickup for the Blue Jays. Now, of course, like I said, George Springer, one of my favorite players in baseball. But if they miss the sweepstakes on George Springer, I think Michael Brantley would be a great fallback plan. All right, now on to Nelson Cruz. Nelson Cruz is one of the older guys in the league, but just looking at his stats from the last 2 years, the guy is an absolute stud. He goes out there and he hits 30-plus home runs every year. I mean, he is a natural-born hitter. This guy is going to be playing until he's 40-plus. So I think it would just be a shame for the Twins not to go pick him up and give him a 1 to 2 year deal. I mean, he's been there. The fans love him. He is the guy for the Twins. So I really don't see another team besides the Twins picking up Nelson Cruz. Hey, it's 2021. COVID's here. I think anything's up for grabs. But I really see Nelson Cruz going to the Twins. The other team that I have Nelson Cruz going to is the Blue Jays. I think the Blue Jays would be a huge pickup for him. I think he could teach their young hitters a lot. And I think Nelson Cruz would just be a great fit on almost any team. But I think for the Blue Jays, he'd be a really good fit. Like I said, I really think the Twins will be the team to pick him up. But if not, I could totally see the Blue Jays picking him up. But you can get him for a 1 year deal. He can teach a lot to your young hitters. I mean, that just sounds like a win to me. But hey, we'll see what happens. All right, the last and final guy I have on this list is Marcus Semien. I mean, he's a stud. He was a stud shortstop for the A's. He's had on and off years, but you know what? Let's face it, he is a top-tier guy, and I think he's one of the best shortstops on the free agency this year. Marcus Semien is one of those guys who's going to be a stud for you at the shortstop position. He's going to get on base. He's going to hit home runs. He's going to make great plays. He's just a great shortstop to have on your team. I think you could get him for a relatively cheap deal, which is surprising for everything he's done. If you look at his WAR, he's got like a 3.7 WAR or something like that. The guy is actually better on paper than people give him credit. I think Marcus Semien would be a great addition to many teams, but there's only a few teams that I wanted to write down for each player. So these are the top 4 teams that I have for Marcus Semien. The first team being the Philadelphia Phillies. Now, the Phillies need a shortstop. I think they've been looking at Didi Gregorius for a while now, and a reunion between Didi and the Philadelphia Phillies would be awesome. But if they don't end up getting Didi, I think Marcus Semien would actually be an even better pickup. I think he's going to do a lot. I think he would really help that lineup, and he could lead off, hit second. I mean, he's the guy you could really build around. And I think the Philadelphia Phillies need that. Moving on to the next team, I think the Texas Rangers would benefit hugely from picking up Marcus Semien. I think they're in a little bit of a rebuild. They're really trying to get guys to see who's going to perform, and I think Marcus Semien would be a stud for them over there. The next team I have would be the Cleveland Indians. I mean, hey, let's face it. They just traded Francisco Lindor. They're going to need another shortstop. So I think Marcus Semien would be a great pickup for them. I think you just give him a 2-3 year deal. You let him perform, let him do his thing. And I think the Cleveland Indians won't miss Lindor as badly with a guy like Marcus Semien filling in his spot. I think it would be a great pickup for the Indians. I think they should do it, if not for purely themselves, but for their fans, just to help the blow of losing Lindor. And then the last and final team I have for Marcus Semien is the Tigers. I think the Tigers are trying to rebuild, and they've been doing a good job. And I think Marcus Semien could really do a lot for them. I think if you pick him up, it's kind of the start to getting the Tigers to really perform and start competing for a playoff spot. Let's face it, the Tigers have been out for the last few years, but I think with a Marcus Semien and maybe a few other key select guys, they could really be performing in the next 2 to 3 years. So if I'm the Tigers, I give him maybe a hair longer contract, 4 or 5 year deal. I see what he can do. I think he's going to be a guy you can build around. I think over the next year or two, you pick up a few more guys, and I think you guys are competing for playoffs in 2 to 3 years. So I think the Tigers would be smart to get him. I think he would fit well there. I think he did so well in Oakland that the A's should just re-sign him. But I don't think that's going to happen, so I think one of these teams would be a great fit for him. So we'll see what happens. All right, guys, that's it for this week's episode. If you could comment, like, and subscribe, I would really appreciate it. Hey, I'm trying to do 2 episodes a week, so I got more episodes coming. I can't wait to get them out there. You can also follow me on Twitter. The link is below. I would love to hear from you guys on where you guys think these guys are going to land. I'm going to have plenty more videos coming out, so stay tuned, and I'll see you next week.